With us now is Indira. Hello, how are you?
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for joining us today, Donna.
It's funny because usually I say, oh, welcome to the show, but in this case, it's like, welcome to your gallery. So how long have you had this space?
I launched the Untitled Space in 2015.
And prior to that, you have always been in the arts. You've had quite a long-standing connection to that, multiple ways. Photographer, you've done so many things. You're a magazine publisher. Walk us through a little bit about your education and how this came to be for you.
Wow, that's a lot, big ask. I have been working in the arts my entire life. When I was 17, I started photographing for elite models. As a photographer, I was working for all the top modeling agencies while I was in college. And basically, after graduation, I moved to London and worked full-time as a photographer, shooting fashion, beauty, fine art. After, almost a decade and a half of working in that industry, I decided to launch my own publication, and I launched the Untitled magazine, which was a huge and very exciting project. We were able to have the magazine become globally distributed within a year of launching, so that was a huge sort of success. And the magazine is still going. That was launched in 2009. Basically, as the magazine evolved, I started curating a lot of art exhibits as well in collaboration with the magazine, and that eventually unfolded into launching the Untitled Space Gallery, which kicked off in 2015. Our first exhibit was called The F Word, Feminism in Art, and was created in celebration of the Girl Power issue of the Untitled magazine. And that was just such an incredible project that I was really inspired to just keep curating and keep bringing more opportunities to women in the arts. And I just felt like it's such a great opportunity, not only as an artist myself, but as a curator and woman I'm very, sort of inspired by continuing to tell the stories of women, of feminist history, of, many stories that have obviously been sort of untold, marginalized, however you want to say it. In any case, it's been quite an incredible sort of path that's unfolded, and now Untitled has been going for 6 years. And this is our first ever group show of fiber art that we are about to discover.
It's very exciting, and you were talking about the Untitled Space, and the title of the show is Unraveled.
Exactly, Unraveled. I mean, basically Unraveled, Confronting the Fabric of Fiber Art, has been an exhibit that I've been actually working on for almost 5 years. So pretty quickly after launching the gallery, I became very interested in fiber art, as it's, textile art in general is always known to be sort of vested in craft and in women's work, needlework, sewing. All of these sort of mediums have tended to be a sort of marginalized sort of segment of tend to be categorized in the craft versus fine art arena. And one of the missions that I've had is to obviously take feminist art and women's arts in general out of being sort of marginalized into the nonprofit and or craft sector, and bring them the voice and the emphasis that they deserve as, serious mediums of contemporary art. They are, I just want to celebrate the work and also put an emphasis on the power of, women in the arts.
Well, even standing here in the center of your gallery, and I hope that we can portray this through the art of video, is the fact that it is so, it's sensual, it's invigorating, it really does play to your soul. It does. It's engaging. You've done a beautiful job in curating all this art, and I can't wait to go take a look at it in depth.
Well, I love giving tours, so.
Stay with us, and here we go.
So we are at the Unraveled, Confronting the Fabric of Fiber Art exhibition at the Untitled Space. And as you walk into the show, one of the first works of art that you will see is by Sally Hewitt, who is a UK-based artist from London. And she does these incredible relief works of fiber art that are rather strikingly realistic. Her work confronts the elements of body type and sort of, how the body is used in our culture. And she has a massive following on Instagram. I actually discovered her work on Instagram and became a huge fan, and was very excited when we were able to get her artwork sent from London for the exhibition. As we continue through the gallery, we will see a lot of very, very colorful and amazingly intricate pieces. Some of these pieces actually take hundreds of hours to create. This is a work of art by Gela, who makes these fantastic crocheted works that combine crochet and yarn with technology. This is a hologram in the middle of a little puppy and kitten. You have to do a bit of a close-up on this one because honestly, it is incredible. And it's one of my favorite pieces to just sort of walk by and enjoy because of these kittens and puppies and everything. It's just so playful. This is an artist over here on the right-hand side, Michaela, who is from Ohio. And she does these fantastic works of tufted yarn. A lot of textile and fiber art is actually based in indigenous cultural techniques. She has a very contemporary dialogue where she mixes in very modern portraits of many of which are self-portraits, I believe, of herself and friends, just sort of with their phones. The content is almost as if they are sort of photographs that she's taken on her phone and very snapshot aesthetic, but it's done with this incredible technique of the tufted yarn, which gives it a really beautiful texture. Over here this is Linda Friedman Schmidt, and these pieces are just, in my opinion, incredibly beautiful. The amount of time and sort of story that goes into each one of these is incredible. These are actually made out of discarded clothing, small fragments of discarded clothing. And Linda has an incredible story. She's actually the daughter of Holocaust survivors and was born stateless in a displaced persons camp and has spent her life using discarded clothing as a metaphor for her own pain and suffering, and to actually sort of try to readdress and give new life to her narrative and to her stories through her work. As you can see, she has a lot of joy, and you can see there's also an inherent happiness. She's sort of rediscovering herself through these fibers that become her metaphorical paint. Her work is truly beautiful. You can see all that incredible detail and very sustainable. This stunning work by Caroline Wayne is actually using techniques that are often used with couture embroidery. As you can see, it's covered in sequins and very, very, very small beads that make up the entire piece. And her work is very intricate. It's stunning. This very playful hanger actually is a work by Daniela, who creates artwork that often addresses fat acceptance and body positivity. Her work is really, really incredibly playful, but at the same time, I think drives home an important message. This particular piece, for example, says, if I were paid for emotional labor, I'd be a billionaire. Think of all the overtime and holidays. And she has another one up here. Again, another sort of work that is very activist-oriented. And it says, if he were a woman, he'd be labeled morbidly obese or worse, fat. As you can see, her work really is very strong despite its playful display. So this is a work by Kelly Bomer, who does very interesting sort of motifs, often with animals. This is actually, she also incorporates a component of taxidermy with her work. And one thing that I think is very interesting with Kelly's work is that she often recycles her materials. When an exhibition is over, she will often deconstruct the actual pieces and remake new sculptures for the next show, so that they're constantly evolving and sort of continuing to live in a new spiritual form, which I think is fantastic. above, we have a work by Kathy Sirico, who works with a variety of techniques, including skins and faux fur and very vibrant colors, which, as you can see, recall almost Indian indigenous narrative with their combination, but at the same time in a very joyful contemporary way. And below, we have this stunning duo by Elise Drake. This pair really, I think, are one of the highlights of the exhibit. They are so unique. In any case, Elise is really an incredible artist. She was awarded an award by one of the curators of the MoMA, and she does these beautifully detailed works that really address contemporary culture and the people that live in it. I love all the little patches and playful components of this work, which is all made by hand. Over here we have a camouflage CUNT. This is a rather provocative piece, but at the end of the day, it really is about using words that have often been used against women as empowering messages, sort of taking back what has been used against us to highlight and reassimilate it in an empowering way. Katie Commodore, who made this piece, she actually is an adjunct professor at RISD and is an extremely talented lady. This is a stunning work of art by Amber Doe, who is an artist based in Tucson, Arizona. And Amber uses her fibrous, very unique colored fiber to tell the stories of Black women in regards to the environment that she's from, this desert culture. And as you can see, there is something that is very sort of organic about the work with the details and the color, but at the end of the day, she combines it with this feisty pink that adds a very contemporary narrative of the contemporary woman and modern issues that we're all addressing. This colorful, large-scale tapestry piece is actually made out of entirely recycled materials. It is by Katie Sirico, who has performed and exhibited at the Bronx Museum, at the Brooklyn Museum, at many museums around the country. And, you know, she has a really unique take on her work. She also incorporates a lot of spiritualism with her work and practices hip-hop yoga, which is a very sort of unique technique. She does a lot of performance work. Aside from making these large-scale fiber pieces, she actually does live performance, a lot of times in conjunction with the exhibition of her artwork. It's really great to zoom in and check out some of the combination of Disney characters with, you know, sequins and all kinds of playful components that she juxtaposes together with her fiber art. All right, so this piece, which is incredibly textural and vibrant, is by Susie Mastropietro. Susie has this incredible way of working with these materials to create these abstract yet very feminine works of art. And it's interesting, she's also a doula, which is she helps women, assists women with giving birth. These two pieces are by Victoria Selbeck. She is an artist currently residing in Connecticut, and she's from Pittsburgh. Victoria traditionally has always been more of an oil painter who does large-scale figurative nudes of women. And she's recently sort of evolved her practice with these wood cutout pieces that really show these silhouettes of women combined with lace. And there's a lot of historical references, such as this one, which includes a very well-known painting as a backdrop. I just really love the combination that she has created here. So this is a work of art by Jody McDonald. And Jody spends over 200 hours to make each one of her artworks, which all use actually photo replicas of her own face on the figures. So the doll that you can see in this cage here, it's a very interesting piece with each newspaper that is lining the cage, handmade by the artist, and It's a very interesting work inspired by a film from the 1930s about sort of carnival and circus freak shows. If you look into the backstory of this piece, it's really fascinating how it delves into this narrative of, what was considered entertainment at one time. Okay, so here we are with Orly Kogan. Orly is an incredible artist who has been working for several decades creating these intricate narrative works that touch on fairy tales, the history of feminism, as well as addressing how, the confessionalist nature of our society. So she creates these very unique sort of stories that have many, many characters, and if you kind of go in and look at them, there's lions, there's little frogs leaping, there's you really can get lost in this story. Orly has exhibited at the Museum of Art and Design, as well as the Brooklyn Museum and many other museums in New York and throughout the U.S. and abroad. So this is work by Dominique Vitale. Dominique has exhibited with the Untitled Space on several occasions, and her work, particularly these pieces, are embroidered vintage lingerie that really talk about sort of the history of the way women have been perceived in our culture, the patriarchy. She also mixes in motifs of religion and Catholicism in her work. I really love the detailing in her work, as well as that combination of the vintage garments to really kind of give a full circle to the story. So this has been one of the most popular installation art pieces in the exhibit, in that everybody is really drawn to this. It has so many small components and details of the soft sculpture that make up the whole. This is actually by an anonymous collective called MZ-Car, which is actually racism backwards. And at the end of the day, each one of these are actually, interestingly, the front and back of each one of these pieces is fully realized. And it addresses really the Black narratives and bringing voices to Black sort of history, as well as reimagining how society would be with a new sort of emphasis. As you can see, almost all of the televisions in this piece are depicting sort of Black narratives, and their work really addresses kind of shedding light on Black history and how we can reimagine or recreate history through this kind of storytelling. So these are by Katrina Mycut, and she does these incredible cross-stitch, detailed, tiny little works. As you can see, each one of these is a mini condom in thread. So we've been exhibiting Katrina's work for quite some time. Katrina will be featured at the 2022 Bronx Biennial. The Glamour and Cosmopolitan covers are hand-embroidered works by Katie Itter, and I just love how she works with these body-positive images. She reclaims a traditionally, as we all know, Glamour and Cosmo tend to depict more contemporary beauty standards that are accepted in our society and very rarely show the plus-sized figure. And Katie really wants to embrace body-positive narratives by putting these sort of women on the cover of magazines, but she does it in a very playful, empowering way. I just love the details also in her work. They're really incredible. So, as we all know, during the pandemic, there was a bit of a shortage of toilet paper as well as hand sanitizer. And Melanie, in a very playful, humorous way, addresses the emphasis that was put on these products. I think that it's really fascinating how she also glorifies the everyday object in her work. She likes to celebrate things that are traditionally not celebrated. And I think that's just, a very unique point of view. This work here is another one by Elise Drake and Notoriety, and it actually has a secret camera hidden inside the artwork, and the eyes are actually you. So when you go and look at this piece, you can see your own image in the eyes of the artwork. And I just thought this was such an incredible piece that really is addressing modern issues of surveillance, of personality, and notoriety. This is a work of art by Jamia, who is based in Los Angeles. She's actually also a school teacher, and she works with recycled materials to create a lot of her quilted artworks. And here we have another piece by Linda Friedman Schmidt, a smaller work, which is followed by a work by Carol Scavato. Carol works a lot with narratives of the geisha culture in her hand-embroidered works. We have Hera Kim, whose work here is thousands of tiny little pins that are in this sponge. Her work addresses the void. So we have two different works of art over here. We have Elizabeth Miller, who is a BIPOC artist who works entirely regarding motifs of the human hair and of how hair and the assimilation, appropriation, the use of hair really is a cultural narrative. To the right, we have Stephanie, who works with recycled, reappropriated plastic. Her work is very powerful. It also is inspired by a lot of the indigenous cultures of her own personal history and family's history. This is a work by Mary Tooley Parker, who creates hooked rugs. And I just love how playful her work is. She actually calls this piece Marseille, Cynthia, and Ruth at the Piggly Wiggly. As you can see, there's Ritz crackers, they're shopping, they're in a grocery store, they've got their little curlers. I mean, her work really has this very interesting juxtaposition of contemporary motif and old traditional ways of creating work with these sort of vintage snapshots of culture. Back here we have another work of art by Orly Kogan, and she created the large-scale tapestry that we saw in the front of the gallery. We also have this stunning work that is of these very intricate, beautiful, tiny little broken birds. This is by Ruth, who lives in Greece, and she sent these all the way from Greece to be featured in the exhibition. By Melissa Zexter, who hand embroiders over photographs. Melissa has been featured at many international exhibitions and museums with her work, which is very detailed and stunning. Over here we have a work by Sophie, who is a London-based artist. This is her first exhibition in the United States, which is very exciting. And she works with small pins as well as threads to create these very unique portraits. She always works with a monochromatic technique in black and white to tell her stories, which I think this is such a sensitive, detailed, and unique way of creating portraiture. So above we have Christy O'Connor, who has created this piece with tiny red threads and dressmaking patterns, and it's about victim blaming. We have these very colorful pieces of art by Delaney Connor, who is an artist from Colorado. She does a technique called punch embroidery to create these very geometric inspired portraits of women. Delaney likes to focus on the essence of femininity versus the individual with her work. This is an artwork by Marianne Fairbanks, who is actually an assistant professor at the University of Madison, Wisconsin. And she does very, very unique woven works that are in very vibrant, dramatic colors. Her work tends to be abstract. And on the right, we have Robin Kang. Robin's work, as you can see, combines digital technology and the sort of computer motherboard with her hand-woven works that has very unique metallic threads, and she combines also a sort of shamanic history with her work and the history of indigenous sort of weaving with her work. And above, we have Sarah Blanchette, who's a young artist who combines her photo digital self-portraits into these fabric pixelated works, which are really interesting because when you look at this in person, you don't really see the portrait straight away. But actually, if you look at it on a phone, the portrait really comes through.
So congratulations on a phenomenal show. And I see you have your work here. Tell us about this.
This is a series that I did with Catherine Crockett, who is a very celebrated modern dancer. She is a principal dancer at Martha Graham for 20 years. She's danced with Baryshnikov and many famous dancers over the years. So this particular series of images that I did of Catherine, I hand embroidered. They were printed, they're photographs that I did of her, and they're hand embroidered. They were printed on 100% cotton paper. And they're really about the power of women to give life, the power of the feminine divine. I really just wanted to have pieces that evoked that feminine power through the artwork, and Catherine is such an incredible muse to work with. I just love collaborating with other women to make my art.
Well, congratulations. It's fabulous. And it was very, very nice to be here with you.
Thank you so much.